2 braid, 3 braid, and 4 braid. Who knows how to braid hair? Raise your hand, raise your hand, raise your hand. You are at a distinct disadvantage. Problem with braiding hair versus braiding bread is that we braid hair fairly tight, right? You don't want it real loose where it's sloppy and falling apart. With bread, we absolutely want it loose and falling apart. Okay, we want to see a little bit of slack in there. So to say that you're at a disadvantage, well, that's a little disingenuous, but it can be a little bit tougher because you're so used to pulling things tight that you continue to want to do that. And I'm guilty of that. I knew how to braid hair before I knew how to braid bread. And so I was always making it too tight. And you can do this with other things too, coffee cakes and what. So I've pre-stranded some dough here, and I'm covering it up with a side towel, just something to keep a crust from forming. I'm gonna start with 2 strands. Now these were the first 2 I stranded, and they relaxed a little bit. Now the hardest thing about stranding is getting them even, right? And with rolls, it's a little forgiving. It's not forgiving with bread. Not with loaves like this. And I want to take this out. This is going to be the 2 strand. I want to take this out a little ways, maybe about 12 to 15 inches. I don't mind tapering the ends a little bit, but I typically don't taper. So now this strand needs to be the same length. Use 2 hands, keep it moving, and you're drawing out a little bit too. And this is later the technique you will use for baguette. So it's good to get a kind of a feel for this right now. And always strand it out just a little longer than you need because it's going to relax a little bit. Okay, that's still a little short, so I'm going to strand a little bit more. Got a little snot bubble there on the end, but I'll take care of that. That's what I call these little bubbles that you get. All right, so I have 2 strands. Now for a 2 braid, let me lay this one down first. For a 2 braid, you're just going to make a cross. And this is the most basic braid there is. It's not one I'm not wild about. You're going to take your strands and you're going to fold them over side by side. So they're going to cross over and lay side by side. And then you're going to bring your top strands and do the same thing. We're not wrapping them around. This is not a braid necessarily. We're going to bring this strand back over, this strand back over, this strand comes up, and in the end, we're going to bring them all together into a point, and we're going to make sure they never come apart. It's kind of sinister. And when you lay it out, you get kind of a nice elongated braid. It doesn't feel like you're braiding with the 2 strand because you're just crossing over, but in the end, it has a little bit of a taper to it. Okay, so it's a little fatter up here and a little skinnier down here. And you want to make sure there's no chance that those ends are going to come loose. So there's your 2 braid. You can do that with a dinner roll. It's a little bit of handwork, a little more handwork than you want to be messing with. All right, let's move on to the 3 braid. And this is the one you guys are probably mostly familiar with. You might want to start taking notes at this point, because we're going to start talking about positions of strands and where those strands go. So we're stranding this out nice and even. Yeah, I'll do all that while you guys grab some paper. And again, my next strand needs to be the same size. And I used to make coffee cakes in my bakery. I would use a 3-strand coffee cake. It does a really nice job with it's also, I make king cake. I would strand out, or I would roll out a coffee cake, and then I would fill it with cheese, fold it over on itself, give it a trifold with cheese in the middle, cut that into thirds, and then 3 braid those strands. And it made a really nice king cake because you could drag it and elongate it into a circle. And I learned that from Mark Atwood at Atwood's Bakery in Lafayette, Louisiana. Which is interesting because my bakery was in Lafayette, Indiana.
You owned a bakery?
I did, yeah. I owned a bakery cafe for about 9 years. Close to 10, just not quite there. The light's kind of blinding. 3 strands, equal length. Okay, that's all I need. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this. And maybe I shouldn't confuse you this way, but when I first learned I would strand end to end with a 3 braid. But then I learned how to braid from middle out. Now I kind of like that better, personally. So I've got my 3 strands. This is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. And those are positions, not strands. So this is position 1, always to my left. Position 2 is in the middle, position 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring either outside strand, whether it's position 1 or 3, to the middle. And then I'm going to bring the other outside strand to the middle. And as I do that, I'm just going to lay it on top of itself fairly loose. Okay, then at the end, I can take these 2 and press them together. Then, to do the other way, don't just pick it up and turn it, because then you have to braid underneath, which you can do, but it's confusing as all get out. Pick it up and go end for end. Oh yeah, hey look, now this strand came to the middle, so this strand comes to the middle. Ah, look where we are. The trick too, or the method for 3 strand braiding is outside in. Start left or right, doesn't matter. The outside one comes to the middle, the outside one comes to the middle, and you just switch sides as you go. And that's all 3 braiding is. See the slack in there? If you don't get that, you'll get tearing along these braids or along these strands as it proves, because it'll set against the other, and then it'll pull and it'll shred right along. So you want to make sure it's nice and loose. Now let me show you that end to end. Our dough is nice and is not very far along, so I can play with this a little bit. And I'm going to do the 4 strand from end to end. I can't do that from the middle out. But again, I like to do the 3 braid from the middle out. I feel like I can control its structure a little bit better. So for the end to end 3 braid, you're going to start with 3, again, 3 positions, and just bring the middle, or bring the outside in. Started with the left, now I'll go to the right. Kind of keep those guys together. I'll show you what we're going to do with those. And lay in some slack. Just like our dinner rolls, we want a little slack in there, and I want it nice and even as I go too. If I start to pull, it'll get tapered in the middle. If I go real slack, it'll get kind of fat, get mouse belly, like your snake ate a mouse. Okay, and then when I get to that impossible end, I just bring these 2 together and pinch them together. There's just no more to do, pinch them together. And then I do the same thing up here. I bring these 2 together and I pinch them in. And so you kind of get that head like you do from a dinner roll. And you've got that on either side. Just make sure you pinch that so that there's no way that that's going to come loose. If you notice you're a little bit odd, like here I'm a little tight, I'm going to, like you.
I saved you some finish to show them the 2 and the 4. And then you can eat it. That's what it looks like when it's done.
Oh, okay, okay.
We ate the 3, sorry.
Eek. So we're going to draw out here. We're a little bit thin here. We're going to push in here. We're a little thin here. We're a little fat here. We draw this one out, push this one in. But you want to be careful because that'll begin to change the shape of your braid. Now the 3 braid is nice, but it's kind of a flat low. Makes a fine sandwich ring. There's a lot of things you can do with that. But let me show you the 4 braid. And I'm going to put these right side by side. They're essentially the same size, so they should proof and bake at the same rate. Once again, we're going to take our relaxed strands and we're going to take them on out. And this is a really nice one. I like this one for sliced bread. This is one you would want to do with your challah bread for, I don't know, Miriam was here, she could tell me. When challah is, I think Passover or one of the Jewish holidays. Challah is an egg bread. It is typically a little drier than this egg bread. Got a bubble right there. That's undesirable. And I could puncture that with a knife, but I want to get that bubble out. So I'm going to push that out. See that right there? There's a little gas. I want to get rid of that because that's a false structure in my strand. And I want to make it relatively long. I'm saying about 12 to 15 inches. And that's a 4-ounce piece, so that goes a long way. This is going to yield, 4 4-ounce pieces is going to yield us a 16-ounce loaf, which is not a huge loaf. It's going to look huge, but it's not. Selling a lot of air. Ooh, don't put that on the video. It's true. You know, fermentation is just about putting air into the product. But look, I know how and you don't, so you're going to pay me to do it. just like the guy that works on your car. Okay, nice and smooth. We get all 4 of our strands. Now this is where understanding, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to write down the most of, and that's the numbers that I'm going to give you. I'm going to pick those snot bubbles so they break. And again, I'm going to pinch them down, so I'm not too worried about it. 4 braids, or 4 strands. Every chef is different. The worst thing that can happen is you can go to a chef and he or she does everything just the way you do. Because what do you learn from that? Nothing. If they do something a little different, I'm going to see something a little different. Maybe I agree with it, maybe I don't. In their kitchen, that's the way it's done. That's all there is to it. Okay? In their kitchen, this is how we do it. Your kitchen, you get to do it any way you want. And people will come in and question that and talk about blah, blah, blah. Hey, my shop, my rules. It's got to be that way. We have one way of doing things. Okay? So you may see something a little different. This is how I 4 braid. And there are a couple of different ways you can do this. 1/3. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Remember that. 1/3. And we're going to lay in a little slack, and we're going to make sure that the braid goes all the way to the top. 2/3. Lay in a little slack. I don't want it tight. 4/2. 4 comes back over, position 2. 1/3. 2/3. 4/2. And you'll begin to see this braid take shape. 1/3, 2/3, 4/2. See that?
Is it easier to say inside, outside?
Because it's not that way. I'm coming from the outside in here, and then I'm taking the middles and I'm folding them over, and then I take the outside back in. So it's not really that simple. It's 1/3, 2/3, 4/2. Write that down. 1/3, 2/3, 4/2. And what I want you to do, ask Chef Worley her method, because it's slightly different. I think she goes, well, I'm not even going to confuse you or myself at this point. Now, when these 2 pieces come together, again, I want to marry them up. Down here, I can't reverse braid too easily, but I can sure fake it. Nice and even. I've got this row. I like to think of that as like Stegosaurus plates along his back. That nice even row. And when that bakes, that's going to look like a 3 braid, which is flat with a ridge across the top. And you're going to get a nice round loaf. You can run that through the slicer, get some really nice slices of some really attractive bread. Hand slice that, make a sandwich out of that. This isn't just some old round loaf. This is a braided loaf, and it looks a little different, and it reacts a little different, and it makes a really nice sandwich. So there's your 4, and your 3, and your 2. Okay? And make sure that there's no doubt those seams are going to stay together. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Don't reshape them. Don't make them look funky. But look, all the same. All the same. All the same. That's what we're looking for. And you get that through nice, gentle braiding. A little bit of slack built in, which mine is starting to lose because of fermentation. Okay? 2 braid, 3 braid, 4 braid. Now, you should have enough that each of you, or you can do all 3 braids. If you want to forego, say, the 2 braid or maybe the 4 braid, and you promise me you're going to practice it later, you both can do a 4 braid and then one of whatever you've got enough left for, because how many pieces you got? Yeah, you can do 1 3, 1 2, and 2 4s. Okay, so let's stick to that, because I know y'all want to play that 4 braid, and you really do. Because of the 3 of these, that is the most attractive. Okay, any questions? Let's go braid some bread.